Hey, what's up guys? JB here. As I'm sure most of you have heard by now, Final Fantasy VII has returned over on the Japanese side of War of the Visions as part of their third year celebration. And this time it's including 2 brand new units, including an all-time favorite in Sephiroth. And this guy really needs no introduction, being perhaps one of the most famous and recognizable characters in the entire Final Fantasy universe. Personally, for me, as I'm sure for many of you as well, Final Fantasy VII is about as nostalgic as it gets. And this guy is really a big part of that. I know for me, I will never forget that iconic scene between Sephiroth and Aerith. Definitely something that I was not expecting or prepared for as a young teenager playing it at the time. Now, what may be most surprising about Sephiroth coming to War of the Visions is that he is actually the first Final Fantasy unit that is coming in with a 100 cost designation. Is he going to be badass enough to actually live up to that? And will he actually live up to the hype among the player base that seems to almost be reaching a fever pitch at this point? Well, let's actually dive into his kit and find out. So Sephiroth is coming to War of the Visions as a 100 cost Dark Element. He has a standard 3-1 movement and he can wear hats and cloth. Now starting with his TMR, this one is bringing in a party buff of 30% attack along with 20 defense penetration. Now defense pen in particular is something that has been pretty rare to find on TMRs, and I do believe that this is our first defense pen party buff that we've seen in the game. It does have 2 casts on it, which is very nice. The only thing that I think I could really ask for on this TMR is, maybe some agility on the base stats. Otherwise, I am a very big fan of this TMR. I think anytime that you have a buff coming into the game that can really breathe some new life into some older units that maybe don't have as competitive of a defense penetration as some newer ones, I definitely really like that for gameplay purposes. Now shifting down into his stats, and immediately popping out here is going to be those first 2. Seph is coming in really strong with both his HP and attack values. He actually reaches top 15 in those categories. Now the rest of the stats here aren't quite as impressive as that, but they are not bad by any means. The base dexterity is actually pretty strong. Aside from that though, he really is ending up kind of in line with the UR average in most other categories here. And that does include agility, though he does actually have an agility passive which is available to him, which actually will help him out significantly there and does actually bring him up to an above average level just slightly in his agility. Now in terms of his accuracy, again, he's going to be kind of middle of the pack there, though he does actually have a pugilist passive which can get an additional 20 accuracy if you wanted to use that, but I don't really recommend using that one. It's really not a great passive otherwise. Now ending on a more positive note here, he does actually have a pretty nice crit value here that you can build off of, and I actually think that that would be a good way to go for him. Now looking next at his mastery ability, he is coming in with a 20% slash res penetration, which I do like. Always nice to see that really on any slash unit out there. And then he is picking up a 20% crit rate boost here, which is factored into that value that we were just looking at. Now on the defensive front, we are looking at 0 defense and 0 spirit, so not a great start, but he is salvaged here by a pretty solid resist line. 15% to slash, pierce, and missile. He is neutral to magic, and really his only negative here is going to be that -5 to strike damage. On the ailment front, we are looking at 50% there to charm, which is always nice. And then he is actually picking up 10% to frostbite, which is actually very nice to have on a physical unit. So I'd say looking pretty solid here overall statistically, and definitely profiling as a physical bruiser archetype. Now in terms of the Dream Enhancement system for Sephiroth, he is going to be tagged as a physical attacker, so he will have the sort of the standard stats available to him here, in terms of reincarnation. So we are looking at a pretty significant boost to his attack here at up to 1800, and kind of a moderate boost here to his HP as well. Now for the level 140 mastery, he is picking up some extra resists here to both pierce and missile, so that will actually put him at a 25% base value for both of those, which is very, very solid. Especially when it comes to pierce, because, as of yet in the game, there really is no significant source of pierce res penetration, so that is still one of the damage types that you can effectively shut down on resistance alone. Now, along with those resist, he is picking up an upgrade to his Job 25 ability similar to many other units, and this one is actually going to become a guaranteed hit upon awakening. So nothing crazy here with this mastery, but you can never really go wrong having a 100% hit in your back pocket to really fall back on if you need it. Now, moving on to the support abilities and counters, option 1 will be an always on, and that's because we're getting a 50% defense penetration there. We don't often see north of 40% on these passives, so really strong start there right off the bat. Now, on top of that, he is getting a massive 20% resistance to all elements here. And this is definitely crazy on a dark unit in particular. I'd say Sephiroth has a lot of nice things in his kit that we'll look at here very soon, but I think that this passive really is what makes this character not only in effectively countering the light element, which he is going to be exceptional at, but really having this nice base to build off and really to be able to counter any element out there. It's probably one of the most unique things about this unit, and I do think that this is going to age very, very well as we sort of march onwards towards a more multi-element meta. Now, Seph does actually have some other nice passives here that he can pair with that one. Notably, he does have the Soldier subjob, and that's going to give him access to Self-Sacrifice. So he can opt for that massive 60% attack boost there that you see in number 4. And that's actually going to net him 250 raw attack on equipping that. Now, other nice options here could be option 2, which is effectively a Thief's Lore clone. That's going to give him that 12% agility along with that additional mobility. As always, I'd say that this is probably a must for manual play. And I'd say because of this, Sephiroth is definitely shaping up to be a very strong character in that arena. Now for counter abilities, Seph's new main job is actually going to give him a physical reflex. So definitely another sign here that I think that he's going to be a really strong physical bruiser. Now the other counters that he has, I think are pretty lackluster and outdated with just a single tile reach on both of them. So I don't think that I would actually bother with either of those, unless maybe I was going for something specific, maybe in a PvE setting. All right, let's dive into the main kit here next, and Sephiroth does have 2 buffs. The first one is going to be his party buff, and this is providing a 20% light resist as well as 50% reaction block for 3 turns to his allies. And this one actually does come packaged with a unique buff for himself. It's going to be a new mechanic for War of the Visions, and it is going to be a preemptive counter ability with a range of 4. It has a non-elemental 80% mod on it. This is a very nice buff here, for several reasons. First of all, that light buff, obviously that's going to be great for countering any light teams out there, or to protect against, kind of being hard countered if you were going to be using him on defense. The reaction block, I think, kind of speaks for itself. The general power of counter abilities has really been increasing, over the past year of the game, including Sephiroth's here, with this new ability. The most interesting thing about this ability here is that last line, though, which is going to give him that new counter. It's the first time that we've seen something like this in War of the Visions. And what this means is that Sephiroth is effectively going to have 2 different counters that are going to be active, while this buff is online. So he can actually reflex you and preemptively attack you, all in one. Now his second buff here is a self buff, and this will be a very important piece of his survivability. It's a 3-hit, 50% all damage barrier, and it's also going to grant him a medium 10% AP restore. So the general barrier there is really leaning into that bruiser side that we've talked a little bit about. So assuming that barrier isn't getting broken immediately, I think that this should allow Sephiroth to actually take a couple of hits before going down, if not more. Now that AP auto restore there is definitely the cherry on top for this one, and that's definitely going to allow him to be AP independent and definitely allow him to run free of Ziza's bells. Now moving into his attacks here, his low AP execution style skill is a range 2, range height 1, and this one is coming along with that standard low 121% mod. This one is going to bring a 25% agility break post damage. So I think this skill is fine, I think it could be pretty good for guild raids, though Dark actually does already have a free unit in Renell who actually brings this utility already today. Now his second attack is going to be a range 3 with a range height of 1, has a large 200% mod, pre-damage we have a 25 defense break, and this is coming with a 3-hit attack as well. Now this one is definitely limited here by that straight line targeting pattern and a bit on that range there at only range 3. But otherwise, I think this is an excellent attack, especially for guild raids where, we are getting an important debuff here with that 25 defense break, while also ramping up the chain at the same time with the 3-hitter. Now his third attack is that familiar large diamond AoE pattern that we've been seeing on nearly every damage dealer these days. And this one is coming in with the medium 165% mod, and pre-damage we're going to have 2 effects. The first one is going to be that general barrier break. So this actually will be a very nice utility, if you have a mixed damage party, maybe with some magic damage dealers alongside you. This one is actually also going to give Sephiroth a buff with a 40% increased slash res penetration that lasts for 3 turns. And this is all coming for just 32 AP, which is actually on the lower side for an area of effect of this size. So really nothing bad I can say about this skill. This is a great one. Now his Job 25 ability here is going to be a range 3 with a +1 on the cross area of effect. It has a range height of 1, again gaining another on that area of effect. This has a medium 165 mod, and this one is coming in as a typeless damage. So this actually will give him away kind of around highly slash resistant enemies. Though with the level of his penetrations, I don't really think that he'll need it. This also has a very nice effect on it here, as it will reduce the target CT by 25%. And as mentioned earlier, this skill does get an enhancement if you take him to level 140, and it is going to become that guaranteed hit that you see there. Now, saving the best for last here, we're going to look at his Limit Burst, and this one again is coming in with that large diamond AoE. It's a range of 3 on the target square with an additional 2 on the AoE, getting it up to a total range of 5. And this one is coming in with that standard 200% LB mod, and it is a guaranteed hit ability once again. Now, the skill will also reduce Sephiroth's AP consumption by 40% for 3 turns, so that is very nice as well. This skill does cost 49 AP though to use, so kind of offsets a little bit of that benefit. Overall though, you will come out well ahead there, with that AP consumption buff. So I'd say overall, we are looking pretty stacked here in the kit. Nice buffs, nice debuffs here. We have several nice large AoEs, and then we have those guaranteed hits there on top of it. So very, very strong. All right, moving on to Sephiroth's Subjobs, and I'd say that if you're comparing it to his main job, these are not going to look quite as nice. His main job is coming in with 2 additional skills. Skill 1 is going to be a non-damage TP-based skill that is going to provide a 25% chance to doom the targets. I'm not a big fan of this skill. Seph is not going to be a unit that I would consider running at high faith to kind of maximize the benefit of using this. And that's because he really doesn't have any other ailments, elsewhere in his main kit. And kind of knowing that Seph does have some vulnerability against magic damage, I would try to kind of minimize that faith as much as I could. So this skill, I feel like kind of at the end of the day is here more kind of for flavor or maybe for PvE use. Doom itself as an ailment, I don't think is all that great for PvP. It just takes too long to actually count down at that 4-turn mark. If Doom were to maybe get rebalanced into maybe a 3-turn ailment, I think at that point I might feel a little bit differently about it. Skill 2 is going to be another ailment skill. This one is a 25% chance to immobilize, and it's on a range 4 with a 165 mod. This skill is fine enough, it's nothing great, but maybe something that could be used more of like a Hail Mary type play, maybe in a manual setting. In auto, I think it's going to have a tough time competing against other skills in his main kit that have a similar mod there, so I'm not sure how often we would actually see it or be able to rely on it for that reason. Overall, I think it's not that great of a sub-job in my view. I don't think that I would run it very often, if ever. Seph's sub-job overall, I don't think are a huge highlight for him, as I kind of alluded to. He does actually get a couple of additional sub-jobs here in Soldier and Pugilist, which I think are kind of on the weaker end of the spectrum, amongst all of the other sub-jobs in the game. The passives that do come along with those jobs I think are pretty decent, so we'll take them for that. But otherwise, nothing really all that groundbreaking in these jobs. With Soldier in particular, it has a couple of decent skills. Paralyzing Edge gets enhanced to actually become a 100% hit, so another one that he could have access to there. In addition to that, Hazard Break will be getting enhanced so that it actually will be an AoE Protect Dispel on top of very nice damage there. So I'd say, I might go for this sub-job if I was in particular need of that Protect Dispel and sort of having that utility on my team. Now, in terms of the Pugilist sub-job here, we do have some skills to kind of help out his sustain and kind of bruiser nature a bit here, and maybe even target some damage weakness. We do know that many units in the game actually do have that strike weakness innately. The couple of skills that I like on this job in particular are going to be Breathing Technique. That is going to be a 30% self-heal. This is something that the AI will use even in auto, if you're sort of advancing on the enemy and they aren't quite in range yet and you have taken significant damage. The other skill that I do really like on Pugilist is Demon Purger. That's going to be a short range 1 attack. It does have an escalating mod on it. It can get up to a massive 285% mod, so that'll be doing really, really nice damage. And this one does get enhanced so that this is a 30% drain on top of of that. So, if you're able to finish somebody off with that and do big damage, it's conceivable that, he could heal up maybe 3 or 4k with this, which is pretty nice. So I do think the sustain features of this job kind of lend themselves pretty well to the bruiser nature that Sephiroth is trying to bring innately. So I think in most cases I would probably use this sub job unless I specifically needed that protect and dispel ability. Alright, moving into future considerations here next, and there is a new vision card that will be coming alongside Sephiroth that you can see here. This one is not a dark-based card, but like most cards that we've been seeing on the Japanese side these days, it is a job-based one. And this card is going to be effective for some sword and staff-based jobs as well as katana jobs. The base stats on the card, I'd say, are just a little bit underwhelming here. The high attack value, I think, is really the only thing that is standing out there. The bestowed ability here is fine, agility is always welcome. In Sephiroth's case, this will actually net him about 5 agility, but again, just a little bit underwhelming here because it is just a single effect. Now, the party effects, again, I'm not really super in love with as a primary card, but maybe this is something that I would consider as a secondary or, maybe something to maximize damage in a PvE setting. The reaction block here and the crit evasion, I like those well enough. Again, not something I necessarily would look for on a primary slot. Reaction block, though, I think maybe is becoming a little bit more important, a little bit more compelling, especially if we start seeing more units coming into the game with an ability similar to Sephiroth's, which is going to allow them multiple counters, in one turn. The more and more of these job-based cards that I'm seeing coming into the game, the less enamored I am with them as a system. Not only with the slow rollout and sort of the actual adoption of these into a new meta, but also in how limiting the current job divisions are. I think that Gumi either needs to provide a lot more of these cards, as free handouts, maybe up to maybe a couple a month to sort of speed up the process a little bit here, which, they have actually given out a few of them, which is good. I think even Yuffie's card, I think, was a free initial get. I also think, though, that they do need to look at condensing the job groups a bit, not only for a quality of life in terms of team building, but also to expand in the actual options and capabilities in terms of putting different teams together. I do think that where they stand now, the cards do feel a little bit limiting. And hey, while they're at it with those quality of lives, if they could potentially look at putting in some filtering options for vision cards and equipment, I think everybody would be pretty happy about that one as well. So there is also a new weapon coming in alongside Sephiroth. I'm going to be going with the Masamune name here for the katana. That's typically what I've seen his weapon translated as in other games. And I am going to be highlighting the crit version here today. I think it is probably the first one that I would build in terms of this weapon. Not only does Seph have that decent innate crit value that we talked about, but the weapon itself actually does have passives on it which sort of lean into that direction and kind of make it suitable for that. And for the base stats here, we are looking at a 144 attack along with the base 26 crit value. The unconditional passive coming along with is going to be that standard 15 slash attack. And Sephiroth, when he wears this one, will be getting 3 additional passives. It's getting a 15 crit rate, 15 crit damage, and 20 initial AP. So overall, I'd say this is a pretty nice weapon. I think that 20 initial AP will actually be pretty key for him to get out that expensive limit burst and still have AP left over to use follow-up attacks thereafter. All right, so flashing over to our timeline here, and just this week on Global, we have gotten Summer Helena. And Sephiroth, he is coming as part of that 3rd anniversary, as we talked about, which would currently have his release lined up for late March, roughly 3.5 months from today. Remember that Seph is a 100 cost unit, and he is launching with the reincarnation system. So if you are interested in pulling for this guy, you're going to want to have as much Visior banked as possible. Personally, I would want at least 42k to guarantee to pull him, and then 15 to 20k left over, to kind of build him out and have some resources left for reincarnation. I'd say that saving that Visior is going to be pretty tough because at this time of year, we're, as we've kind of talked about in my last couple of videos, we are entering this time of year where Gumi, really likes to blast out a bunch of limited time units and cards. And with Helena this week, it has already begun. In terms of meta considerations, no other Dark units here along the way that we're aware of. Although we are anticipating the Dark Warrior of the Crystal Wrath, to be coming to the Japanese side, sometime relatively soon. It just sort of depends how many Void units, we're going to get until she actually releases. At this point, we really don't know too much about her kit, other than that she appears to be magical based. Now, on the counterbalance side for lights, there really isn't anything to speak of, although we did just get Sylvie here on Global, which was a brand new 100 cost light unit. At least as of right now, I don't think that she helps out the Sephiroth situation all that much, but I think if light were to sort of get a brand new bruisery type unit along the way to sort of help counter the Sephiroth Raph situation, I could see Sylvie being a pretty important piece, you know, to kind of back up that unit in the future. So, you know, it could be a ways off, you know, we'll just have to see what happens there. Alright guys, the mock build is up here next, and with the resurgence of Evade on the Japanese side and kind of having that kind of peppered around in the meta, I have made another Evade hunting party here, you know, this time featuring Sephiroth, and we are going to be staying within the dark element for this team. So I'm going to be pairing him here with Dark Fina and Halloween Lucia, and I have built Dark Fina here, you know, hyper accurate, and Lucia actually will be relying on her guaranteed hits. Now Sephiroth, as we talked about, you know, he does have guaranteed hits available to him as well, but for this build example, you know, I didn't really want to rely on those couple of attacks, and I'm actually going to be building up his accuracy here today. Again, you don't necessarily have to go this direction. Again, he does have multiple guaranteed hits in his kit, especially if you take him to level 140. But, you know, for some situations, you know, you may actually prefer to build him accurate, just so that he has access to his entire kit, you know, in any given situation. The accuracy actually is pretty important in the Yuffie matchup as well, since her self buff actually does allow her to evade guaranteed hits for the first few turns. Now for equipment, I am using the new Masamune Katana that we just talked about, and I am going to pair that with a +6 Alex ring. For a TMR, I'm going to use Ziza's bells, and that's going to be mainly for that 7 agility and 14 accuracy. You know, we don't really need the auto restore that one brings, but the base stats, you know, for an accuracy build are quite nice. Now for an Esper, you know, just as last week, we're going to be using Odin once again, just for that combo of high agility, high accuracy, and human killer. That's going to be best, I think, for that matchup against this Fire Evade team. Now for vision cards, you know, we are going to have a single target and area resist covered by Anima and a loyal companion. We are going to have our accuracy covered in the primary slot by Black Rose, and then in the secondary slot by the Persona card there as well. Now I am using the global exclusive Maidens of the Rose card here on Dark Fina. It's not really the greatest fit for her, you know, it's obviously a physically focused card, but her magic in the build, you know, is still quite high, and she does actually still benefit from the base luck on the card and just sort of inching up her accuracy even just a little bit more. And of course, both her and Sephiroth are going to benefit greatly from both the luck and dex that come in the party effects there. Now for the trust stones in the builds, on the left side, my defensive stones, we're going to have slash and missile res on stone 1. We're going to have HP and luck there on stone 2. And then on the third stone, I'm going to go with that blind resistance and fire resist combo. Again, that's going to help protect against Yuffie's blind attack. She does have an enhanced 40% chance to land that one. And then all of these passives are going to get rolled up into a luck set for even more accuracy there on top. Now moving over to the offensive side here on the right, and my first stone is going to be that standard utility stone that I use often in my builds, and that's going to be carrying that acquired AP and dexterity. Now not only will that dex help us in pushing our accuracy just a bit, but it will also raise our crit rate. Now the remaining passives here are just going to be filling in some offensive bonuses for attack, defense pen, dark attack, and slash res penetration, and those are actually all going to get tied into an accuracy set. Now in the stats there, you know, you can see our HP is going to be approaching that 10k mark, and our attack is going to be over 1500 as well. Now all of the accuracy focus that we put in here is going to have our accuracy at a 419 level, which is actually quite high, and we should actually have no issues whatsoever in hitting a hyper evade team. Now, I think in most cases in going up against an evade team, you know, you could opt to build more bulk on Sephiroth. I just kind of wanted to do this as a case example to kind of see what we could get to, you know, if we did want to build for accuracy. And I think going up against that fire team and kind of Yuffie's ability, it does kind of lend itself well for that. Again, I don't necessarily think that you need it, but, you know, I just thought it would be kind of a good thing to look at here today. Now, do also keep in mind that the stats here are kind of based on a level 120 Sephiroth. I've not factored in kind of any of the dream enhancement stats that he could additionally pick up. And the reason for that is just because those are completely variable. Pretty much everyone's Sephiroth, you know, might vary just a bit. So I think that's something I'm going to continue to do here in the future, you know, as more of these units come along. Alright guys, so what is my verdict today on Sephiroth? For one, this is going to be a top class bruiser. I'd say that he's definitely specializing a little bit more on the physical side, you know, especially with that physical reflex that he has. But, you know, assuming that his barrier holds, you know, he can definitely take a hit or two against a magic team as well. And that's going to be mainly due to that amazing 20% Omni resistance that he has in his kit that we spoke about. And that elemental resistance, you know, on top of the active light resistance buff that he has in his kit, I'd say is definitely going to make him a thorn in the side, you know, not only for light teams out there, but really against most any elemental team, you know, for some time to come. Now, along with that survivability angle, he is definitely bringing in some nice utility on top of it. He's going to have breaks against defense, agility, and CT, while also bringing dispels for barriers, protect, and most importantly, the dispel of courage and re-raise that comes on that insane limit burst. Now, although his accuracy isn't really a liability, it's also really not required for him to build up, in most situations, as he does have those multiple 100% hits that he can fall back on. And he has all of this, on top of sporting very nice damage penetration levels and a very high attack value that can be delivered into large area of effect damage. Now, as for my concerns, like many other recent dark units, he is going to have that weakness against units which are stacking very high dark resistance, as he doesn't have access to any kind of dark imperil. And we have seen the light element use that to very good effect, units like Sakura, Lucio, and others. And I will say, although he can take a hit, he's definitely most vulnerable and concerned when it comes to magical scaled damage. And it definitely, I would say, represents the best way to get to this unit, outside of, stacking that dark res. So this unit, he's not invincible by any means, especially if you're able to get the jump on him, where, maybe with a range advantage. Now, on top of that, although his survivability against physical damage, is definitely well above average, if his barrier is broken, he's definitely much less scary, as he doesn't have Immortal Spirit or Re-Raise to fall back on and bail him out. At the end of the day, though, every unit will have its flaws and caveats, and compared to most other units out there, these nitpicks are pretty minor in my view. Perhaps the most impressive thing about this unit is that he's going to be excellent in really any mode of play, whether it's auto play in Guild War or Arena, whether it's manual play in free or class match, or whether he's the new captain of your Dark Guild Raid team. So all of these things add up to Sephiroth representing a compelling, top-tier slasher to build and focus your account around for months to come. Not only for the dark elements, but in the future alongside other elements as more and more job-based vision cards come into play. Alright guys, so that is my take on Sephiroth. I think that this is one of the rare cases where the unit actually does live up to all the hype. I think he's going to be well worth that 100 cost tag, and he is just going to be a monster PvP unit, and one that we're going to be seeing absolutely everywhere. So what do you guys think on this one? Are you actually already hoarding that 42k, and will you go all in on reincarnation for him? Hit me up in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video today, hit that like button. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. And if you like what I'm doing here on the channel, hit that subscribe button if you want to see more. And that's really all I have to say for today. So as always, stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys in the next one.